stop a monster in its tracks, not with weapons, not with fear, but with calm. When a quiet diplomat faces a creature meant to terrify, the unthinkable happens. It listens. What he doesn't know is that this gift could either unite galaxies or unleash a war no one can control. Stay with us, because this is not just a story about power. It's about the connection that changes everything. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Let's move toward wonderful story. Rowan Vale stood at the edge of the landing bay, staring up at the towering structure that housed the heart of the Sarion Empire. The building shimmered in soft green hues, a living monument of stone and energy pulsing with unfamiliar rhythms. Around him, the diplomatic team from Earth moved with quiet tension. Their suits were immaculate, their expressions carefully neutral, but Rowan could feel the unease beneath the surface. He wasn't supposed to be here. Just a week ago, he had been cataloging trade documents and adjusting lighting for press conferences. Now he was a last-minute replacement for an assistant who had fallen ill. A junior aide, sent to support one of the most important diplomatic missions in Earth's history. He tried not to fidget, keeping his hands clasped behind his back the way Ambassador Neris had instructed. She was already walking toward the entrance, tall and composed, her every step smooth with practiced grace. Her voice, cool and firm, echoed in his ear through the communicator. Stay quiet. Stay respectful. Observe everything. Say nothing unless spoken to. Rowan nodded instinctively, forgetting she couldn't see him. The gates to the central hall slid open with a whisper, revealing a chamber so large it felt like they had stepped into the heart of a planet. Light hung suspended in the air like soft stars, drifting between pillars covered in living vines. The Sarion officials, with their blue-tinted skin and translucent robes, watched silently as the humans entered. Every eye seemed to follow them, unreadable and calculating. Then she appeared, Empress Selentha. She stood at the highest point of the chamber, surrounded by silence so deep it seemed to still the air itself. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on water, and her eyes, a brilliant shade of violet, pierced through the delegation like blades of light. She wore no crown, yet every movement of hers demanded attention. Power, raw and quiet, pulsed in her presence. The humans of Earth, she said, her voice clear but calm. You've come seeking peace. Yet what strength do you bring? What worth do you offer us? Ambassador Neris stepped forward and gave a formal bow, precise and balanced. Your Majesty, the people of Earth extend their respect and offer shared knowledge, trade, and cooperation. We seek peaceful relations built on trust. There was a long silence. Selentha tilted her head, studying the ambassador with something between amusement and disinterest. Many have spoken such words, she said. Few have meant them. As the ambassador began her carefully rehearsed pitch, Rowan's eyes wandered, drawn to something strange in the shadows near the throne. He noticed movement, slow, deliberate, powerful. A shape detached itself from the dark, and he realized, too late, that it was no decoration. It was a beast. The creature was enormous, its frame sleek like a panther but lined with ridges of hardened scale that shimmered between purple and deep blue. It had 6 legs and 2 sets of glowing eyes, each watching with quiet intelligence and dangerous intent. No one else seemed to notice, until the beast growled, low and rising. Gasps echoed across the hall. The Sarion guards tensed. Ambassador? Neris turned sharply and her words faltered. The growl turned into a roar, shaking the ground beneath them. Panic rippled through the human delegation as the creature leapt from the shadows, bounding straight toward them. Back! Someone shouted. People moved, stumbling, trying to stay calm, but it was clear no one was in control. The beast was moments from reaching them when Rowan, frozen in place, did something he didn't understand even as he did it. He spoke. Hey, he said, his voice low, firm, calm. Easy there. No harm here. We're just visitors. The words weren't special, but the tone, the sound of his voice seemed to ripple through the chamber. The beast slowed. Its feet skidded slightly on the smooth floor as it adjusted its posture. Its breathing slowed, The growl stopped. Rowan took a cautious step forward. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't look away. "That's right," he said, still in that same tone. "Just breathe, we're not a threat." The beast tilted its head as if puzzled. Then it sat back, muscles relaxing. Silence. Then the guards moved, but not to attack. They held their positions, watching. Rowan glanced up and saw Silentha standing. Her eyes locked on him. The look on her face wasn't anger. It was something else. Wonder, perhaps, or suspicion. "What is your name?" she asked, her voice breaking the stillness. "Rowan Vale, Your Majesty," he said, heart pounding but tone steady. "You calmed Kraith," she said, gesturing toward the beast. "No human has ever approached one and lived. How did you do it?" Rowan opened his mouth, closed it, then answered honestly, "I don't know." The Empress stepped down from the throne, descending toward him like a wave. Her presence was overwhelming. When she stopped in front of him, only inches away, she said quietly, "Then we must find out. You will come to my sanctuary at first light." He nodded. What else could he do? As the delegation was dismissed and ushered away, Rowan looked back once, meeting the beast's eyes again. For a moment, it almost seemed to nod at him. Something had changed. Not just in Rowan, but in the fragile thread between two worlds. Rowan barely slept that night. The events of the day kept replaying in his mind. The beast charging, the fear in the room, and then the stillness that followed his voice. It hadn't made sense. Not to him, not to anyone. He wasn't trained in animal behavior. He wasn't even supposed to speak during the ceremony. Yet somehow he had calmed a creature that could have torn the entire delegation apart in seconds. And now, the Empress herself had summoned him. Alone. At first light, a Sarion guard named Larek came to escort him. Larek was tall, his silver armor engraved with symbols Rowan didn't recognize. He didn't speak much, just gave a short nod and motioned for Rowan to follow. They moved through twisting corridors filled with a strange blue mist, the walls glowing faintly with soft pulses like a heartbeat. Rowan tried not to look lost as they passed doors and arches that all seemed to lead deeper into the palace. Finally, they stopped before a pair of tall, curved doors made from a material that shimmered like glass, but felt solid as steel. Without a word, Larek pressed a palm to a small panel. The doors opened silently, revealing a space that didn't look like any royal chamber Rowan had imagined. It was more like a living world hidden inside the palace. Tall, glowing plants reached toward, a soft golden light that streamed from an unseen source above. Water flowed gently through carved stone channels, and small winged creatures fluttered from tree to tree. But what truly caught Rowan's attention were the enclosures. Each one was unique, some tall, some wide, all containing large, powerful creatures unlike anything on Earth. Some watched him with interest, others ignored him completely. The air felt alive, full of energy and unspoken tension. "You're on time," a voice said, smooth and calm. Rowan turned to see Empress Silentha standing at the center of the sanctuary. No guards, no throne, just her. She was dressed differently than before. Gone was the formal armor. She now wore flowing fabric that shimmered like water under sunlight. Her presence was no less commanding, but there was something softer in her expression. "I wasn't sure what to expect," Rowan admitted, bowing slightly. "I like to keep people guessing," she said, walking toward him. "This place is my retreat. Only a few are ever allowed inside. You're the first human." Rowan followed her gaze as she looked around at the creatures. "What are they exactly?" "They're called Vraliths," she explained. "Guardians, hunters, symbols of power. Some were born in this palace. Others were gifted by leaders of distant worlds, each one dangerous, each one misunderstood." Rowan stepped closer to one of the enclosures. Inside was a beast smaller than the one he had seen yesterday. Its scales were a deeper blue, and its eyes followed Rowan's movements with sharp awareness. "This is Myrex," the Empress said. "He's younger but far more unpredictable than Kraith. He's rejected every beastmaster who's tried to train him. Even my handler can't get close. And you want me to try? Rowan asked, unsure. I want to understand what happened yesterday, she said, now standing beside him. Something in your voice reached Kraith. I want to see if Myrex responds. The same way. Rowan felt his stomach tighten. What if he doesn't? Then we stop, she said. But I believe there's more to this than a lucky accident. He nodded slowly, then took a deep breath and walked closer to the edge of the enclosure. Myrex rose from where he had been lying and stepped forward, his movements smooth but full of tension. The barrier between them hummed with energy. Hello, Rowan said softly. You don't know me, but I mean no harm. Myrex froze, his head tilted slightly, ears twitching. Rowan noticed the change right away. The creature wasn't retreating or attacking. It was listening. You're safe here, Rowan continued, lowering his voice a bit, finding that same calm rhythm he had used with Kraith. No one's trying to control you. Myrex blinked, then slowly lowered himself to the ground. A soft sound came from his throat, not a growl, but something gentler, almost curious. Silentha's eyes widened slightly. Incredible, she whispered. He's never done that before. Rowan let out a shaky breath, unsure whether to feel proud or terrified. I don't understand how it works. Neither do I, she said, stepping closer to him. But I want to. From behind, a voice broke the calm. This is dangerous. Rowan turned to see a Sarion male entering the chamber. His clothes were darker, marked with sharp edges and red symbols. His expression was one of barely hidden anger. Tavalin, Silentha said without turning. You're not invited. I serve the council, he said sharply. If this human has power over our beasts, it must be studied, controlled. He's not a weapon, Silentha replied. He's a bridge. Tavalin gave Rowan a hard look, then turned on his heel and left. Silentha sighed. The council will not like this. They fear what they don't understand. Should I leave? Rowan asked quietly. She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes serious now. No. You should stay. We've only just begun. As Rowan turned back to Myrex, who now sat calmly watching him, a strange feeling settled over him, something between fear and wonder. He hadn't come looking for any of this, but now that he was here, something inside him had awakened and there was no turning back. The days passed quickly, though each one felt heavier than the last. Rowan continued his visits to the Empress's sanctuary every morning. What had started as a strange accident now seemed to be something deeper. With each visit, he connected with more of the creatures. They responded to his voice, calming when he spoke, watching him not with hostility but curiosity. Even the most aggressive beasts grew still when he approached. The palace guards began to whisper, and the Sarion Council took notice. Rowan tried not to let it overwhelm him. He focused on the creatures, learning their names, watching their behaviors, listening to the way they breathed, moved, and reacted. He didn't use tricks or special words, just a tone, a calm rhythm that came from somewhere inside him. It wasn't something he could explain even to himself, but it worked. Empress Silentha watched him closely each day. She rarely spoke when he was with the creatures, but her eyes never left him. When she did speak, her words were thoughtful, as though she were trying to piece together a puzzle that even she couldn't fully see. She called his gift rare, beautiful, dangerous. The tension around the palace was growing. The council members, especially Tavalin, didn't hide their concern anymore. They believed Rowan's presence was a risk, that a human with influence over their beasts could upset the balance of power. Rumors spread that some on the council wanted him removed, quietly, if needed. It all came to a head when General Corrin arrived. Rowan had heard the name. A high-ranking Sarion military leader known for his sharp mind and even sharper temper. He had led many of the Empire's defensive campaigns and was respected by all, feared by many. When he entered the sanctuary with a small group of guards, behind him the air shifted instantly. The beasts in their enclosures stirred. Even Myrex, who had grown calm around Rowan, backed away to a corner. Empress, Corrin said, bowing just enough to be polite. "We must speak." Salentha stood from her seat near the central pool, her expression unreadable. "Then speak." He turned to Rowan. "This human, he's been here long enough. What he does with the creatures may seem harmless now, but what happens if he learns to command them? What happens when Earth decides to use him for its own purposes?" Rowan's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. Salentha didn't. "Rowan hasn't shown anything but peace and patience since his arrival," she said firmly. "He hasn't controlled the beasts. He's earned their trust." "Trust can be broken," Corin replied. "And power can be used even without intention." Salentha walked toward them slowly. "You're afraid. That's what this is." "I'm cautious," Corin corrected. "For the safety of the Empire." Rowan stepped forward then. His voice was quiet but steady. "I didn't ask for this. I'm not here to control anything. I came as part of a diplomatic mission. I'm still trying to understand why this is happening at all." Corin studied him for a long moment, then said, "If you truly want to prove you're no threat, show us. Face Zari." Gasps echoed around the chamber. Zahri was the largest and most dangerous of all the Empress's creatures. No beast handler had ever approached it without injury. Its name alone made younger Sarian guards nervous. Salentha turned sharply. "That is not your call to make, General." But Rowan surprised them both. "I'll do it." She looked at him in shock. "You don't have to." "I know," Rowan said. "But maybe I should." Later that afternoon, the doors to Zari's enclosure slid open for the first time in years. The room was silent. Guards lined the walls. Corin stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching closely. Zari was massive. Its scales shimmered with deep violet and black, its eyes glowing gold. It moved with quiet grace like it didn't need to prove its strength. Rowan took a step forward, then another. Zari growled, low and deep. Rowan stopped, took a breath, and let everything around him fade. The guards, the Empress, the pressure. He focused only on the creature in front of him. "You're not a weapon," he said softly. "I see you. You're more than what they fear." Zari paused. Its growl stopped. Rowan kept his tone steady. "I'm not here to control you, I just want to understand." Slowly, Zari walked forward. It circled him once, close enough that Rowan could feel the heat coming off its body. Then it stopped in front of him, lowered its head slightly, and stared into his eyes. Time seemed to freeze. Then, without warning, Zari pressed its head gently against Rowan's chest. The room was silent. Even Corin didn't speak. Salentha stepped forward slowly. "There's something inside you, Rowan Vale. A connection none of us expected." He nodded, still touching Zari. "I'm starting to think this wasn't an accident." She looked thoughtful, then said quietly, "No, it wasn't." From that moment on, Rowan wasn't just a visitor. He was a question that no one could answer, a presence that shook the old rules of the Empire. Some called him a danger. Others whispered he was the future, but all agreed on one thing. Something had changed, and nothing would ever be the same. Rowan stood in the center of the sanctuary, surrounded by soft golden light and the low hum of alien life. The creatures no longer shied away when he entered. They greeted him with soft sounds, with curious eyes, with quiet trust. He had now connected with 6 of the Empress's creatures, each one different, each one more challenging than the last. The whispers throughout the palace had grown louder. Some still feared him. Others called him a symbol of peace. But Rowan didn't think about titles. He thought about the creatures, the way their minds responded not to force but to calm, to understanding, to being seen. Empress Salentha had begun to walk beside him more often, no longer simply watching from a distance. She asked him questions, not just about the beasts, but about Earth, about humans, about how he had lived before this mission. He told her the truth, that he'd been invisible most of his life, quiet, average. He'd spent his days listening, never speaking out of turn, never being the one who was noticed. And now, in this place so far from home, he had become the center of attention without trying to be. Sailentha listened closely, her sharp eyes thoughtful. She confessed something in return, that in all her years of ruling, no Sarion had ever brought peace to her entire collection, not even her most trusted beastmaster. Rowan asked why she had chosen to keep so many creatures known for their aggression. She answered simply, because I wanted to understand them. That shared desire, to understand rather than dominate, had drawn them closer, not just in duty, but in quiet connection. Their conversations grew longer, their silences more comfortable, and yet there was always a shadow. The council continued to pressure her. General Corrin had not spoken directly to Rowan since the incident with Zari, but his influence remained. Councillor Tavalin had openly suggested removing Rowan from the sanctuary, but Calentha stood firm. Then, something happened that none of them had expected. A young Sarion girl named Kaylee, daughter of a palace caretaker, wandered into the sanctuary during one of Rowan's sessions. The guards had tried to stop her, but she had slipped past them, drawn by the sight of the creatures she had only seen from afar. Rowan had been speaking to Lurien, the most sensitive of the creatures, whose moods could shift with a whisper. The room had gone still when Kaylee stepped forward, eyes wide, and without hesitation spoke to Lurien. Her voice was soft, hesitant, but clear. Lurien's ears twitched. The beast responded, not aggressively, but with recognition. It moved toward her and lowered its head just as Zari had done to Rowan. The room was frozen in disbelief. Sailentha rose from her seat. "How did you do that, child?" she asked gently. Kaylee looked up at her. "I just felt like she was scared. I thought maybe if I spoke the way the man does, she'd listen." Rowan stood beside her, stunned. The Empress met his eyes. "It's not just you," she said quietly. "It's something deeper." Tests followed, careful studies, discussions late into the night. What they discovered wasn't a trick or a gift given to one person. It was a connection, empathy that went beyond words, a pattern in tone and presence that reached into the emotions of the creatures, something that some humans, and possibly a few Sarions, had carried all along unnoticed. Sailentha called a council meeting, the first held within the sanctuary. The creatures remained calm as the leaders arrived, unsettled to be so near them without barriers. Rowan stood before them, with Kaylee at his side. The Empress spoke firmly and clearly. "There is a path forward," she said, "not through power or threats, but through understanding. What Rowan Vale has shown us is not a weapon. It is a bridge. Some resisted. Some still feared what they could not explain. But a new idea had taken root. That peace didn't have to be kept by force. That maybe for the first time humans and Sarions could build something more than just treaties. They could build trust." Rowan was offered a title, not a military one, not even a political role. He became the first speaker of unity, an envoy not for governments but for connection. He chose to stay, not out of duty, but because he had found purpose in a place he never expected. His last conversation with Sailentha before returning briefly to Earth stayed with him. "You were never just a visitor," she told him. "You were a beginning." "And what about Kaylee?" he asked. "There are others like her, aren't there?" "Yes," Sailentha said with a faint smile. "And now they'll be heard." As Rowan boarded the vessel that would carry him home to share what had happened, he looked back at the sanctuary one last time. The creatures watched him from their enclosures, calm and silent. The Empress stood among them, proud and still, and Kaylee waved from beside her, eyes bright with possibility. In the space between two worlds, a quiet voice had made all the difference, not by commanding, but by connecting.